Yeah.
And the funny
Okay.
thing is, the day before, the way I'm describing the video and the way I'm seeing that I understand it sounds
Mm-hmm.
exactly like after the conversion. I don't actually sound
Okay.
that different, which is
Okay.
funny.
Well, you are the same
Huh?
person. You are the same person. But
I
yeah,
thought there
I
was
mean,
more of a stark contrast in my perspective the day before and my perspective the day after, because I was being motivated by the Holy Spirit the day after and I was being motivated 100% by my flesh the day before. But the logic and the way it translated in my speech, it was largely the same.
see, I distinctively remember the night before you were really, really struggling. There was an element of struggle. You recognized that there was a decision to be made, and there was a piece of you that didn't want to make the decision.
Well, I admitted that I didn't love
Or,
God. I said that
okay,
I would choose God over a debauched life, but that I
okay,
secretly wish that I could do whatever I want. And if I had the alternative, if I had the option of, you know, my beautiful ex-girlfriend or $1 billion or to be able to be the one that takes care of all my friends and family or like, imagine the dream life. I was saying I would choose
mm-hmm,
that. That's what I would rather have. If it was either that or a relationship with God, I would choose the life defined by me.
yeah,
And of course, intellectually, I wouldn't. And so I wouldn't actually choose it if it was ever posed because I already know the correct answer. I'm not going to get tricked. It's like, well, okay, well, I understand. Heaven's for eternity. This is for a short time. But that's all head knowledge. Given the choice, I much more, and all my actions are driven towards the life I want to create. It's not driven towards trying to get closer to God. And I admitted that. I was like, that's the way it is. And, we gave the example of a heroin addict. And it's like a heroin addict can, with his actions, it might look like he loves the drugs. But
yeah,
internally, he might actually hate the drugs. It's just that he's trapped in his addiction. And I was saying, for me, I'm actually worse because I will not be the heroin addict. I will not choose the world over God. I will slog away because I already know the right answer is not to do heroin. But secretly, I would rather have the drug than my sober lifestyle. So it was like I'm the anti addict. I'm the one who's not addicted who wishes he was in addiction instead. So it's
huh?
kind of a bizarre perspective to have, and that's what I laid out.
You
Huh?
said that? You said that in that
Yeah.
conversation?
Yep.
Really? The
The
first
first
night? Really? That is a screwed up way of thinking.
You don't remember me saying it?
I mean, I remember coming away from that conversation thinking, "Oh my gosh. Like what? What is to do? What do you do with someone like this? Like they have the answer and they don't want the answer. Or they kind of want it, but they really don't. You know, it's somewhere like you sat there going, "Man, I have such a good thing going. I don't know if this God thing is worth it." That's what it felt like. It felt like the video store,
Mm-hmm.
right? The video store is what it felt like. The guy that he wanted to become a Christian and become, have a living a Christian life, but he had a video store that had an adult section in the back, a VHS video store with an adult section in the back that was too valuable for him to actually want to live for God. And it's like, yeah, and where is that now, buddy? You know, are people still renting your VHS tapes? No, what you have was worth
Yeah, you're
nothing.
bringing up.
And
We had a person in the congregation of our church who felt
yeah,
who went to church and he felt conviction, and then his conviction was, I own a video store, but I've got the back room, and the back room is, you know, not, it's not help. It's people are, getting caught up in pornography and addiction and everything, and I'm contributing to that, and I don't want to be contributing to that. However, it's a lot of money to give up, and so he told your pastor, here's the deal. I
he's
want
like, I'd love, I'd love to keep coming to this church, but I've got this video store with this back room, and it's making me tens of dollars each day, and I don't want to give that big time money up. I have this pearl of great worth, but I don't know. I have the stone that I really like as well. It's like, jeez, oh, peas. That is not worth anything, buddy.
well, it's funny now to look back. It was worth something at the time. He was making
Yeah.
probably
I,
thousands of dollars, but it's funny to look back because now, yeah, you had a VHS rental. It's you still lost it, even though you weren't willing to give it up. You still lost it in the end, and that's really a true of anything in our lives. Anything that we would put in front, anything that we would say, I can't completely surrender because hey, I'm not going to break up with my girlfriend, or hey, I've my work comes first, or whatever vice you cling to, or whatever you're convicted that if you were to really, really do business with God, He would want to address this issue in your life, but it's your favorite thing to do, or your favorite thing to have, or favorite thing to pursue. Well, you would say no. We make fun of the VHS guy because it's like, well, yeah, that's such an old technology. Like, how could you not
yeah.
see that had a pretty quick sunset anyway? But really, everything in life has a quick sunset.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 40. I've only got 40 more years of any kind of energy. So it's like, well, I'm halfway there. What am I going to, I mean, everything will be gone by then. So,
Yeah.
and when that
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
happens, it's going to
Everything will be
feel just
gone by
like
then.
today. Because today,
So do things. Yeah. Today?
today feels
You
like
said
every
today.
other day. I'm always in the
Yeah.
present. And the only difference between the day that, let's say I live till I'm 80, the day that I'm sitting there and it's like, yeah, it's time to go. The only difference between me then and me now is that I'm going to have more memories to think about. My hard drive will have more memories in it.
Yeah. So you got to get out of your way and start doing things that have eternal value. You got to get out there.
Like
And
this podcast.
like well, yeah, hopefully this podcast and we just have to like we got to be hunting these opportunities like it matters. And we've got to be doing things for God, going out of our way. I thought there's this idea that I love that if you sit home and just watch TV every night, you know what opportunities are going to come and knock at your door? Nothing.
The
Nothing.
occasional Girl
You
Scout
might
cookies.
maybe, or a vacuum cleaner. But I mean, like you're sitting there doing nothing at your house, and there are so many opportunities out there. I remember we went snowboarding with a ski club, and the ski club was costing us X amount of money, and then at one point they said, "Hey, well, here's a free ticket," and it's like, "Hey, I wouldn't have had this free ticket if I wasn't here at ski club." You don't get free tickets to go to ski club or go skiing if you're not actually skiing,
Right.
right? And then someone gives you a snowboard. It's like, "Hey, here's a snowboard." Well, I wouldn't have had this free snowboard if it hadn't have been for me in the place where snowboards are. I have a friend who he was in, I don't know, Hollywood, and he was just on vacation, and someone walked up to him and was like, "Hey, you want tickets to go to the Academy Awards?" And he's like, "Yes, I would. I would love that." And he's like, "Yeah, I have tickets and I can't go. Here you go." And he was just on vacation, him and his wife. So they went to the Academy Awards. He got to sit next to like Robert De Niro. And and so yeah, I
That's a
mean it's
good
crazy.
story.
I'm making up Robert De Niro, but like he got to go to this. He would never go to the Academy Awards if he wasn't on vacation in Hollywood. All right? There are opportunities every day that we're looking at right in the face, and all we need to do is just be available, right? So take the same idea of the snowboarding in Hollywood and make it God. All right. What are you doing to avail yourself to God? What opportunities are you doing? Like, are you praying for people? Think about how much time you spend doing silly things. Start praying for the people around you. Maybe something will happen. Maybe because you're praying for someone, you get in the right mindset, you start actually behaving a certain way around the people that you care about, and they start wondering, hey, what's special about this guy? And then guess what? They want to know what's special about you. They start approaching you, and then you develop this relationship and you point them to God, and you just partake in the potential eternity of this other person's soul. I love it. I love it. I love hearing these stories of these people who are doing things for God. And that's where it's at, Dave. It's where we've got to be. I don't know how I got on this, but I like it and we need to do it. Yeah. So you got to avail yourself to God, be open to things. And that's how we're going to get used. So
It's interesting. I don't know how to do that.
well, try something different. I don't know what that different is. Go to a soup kitchen. Go spend a morning in prayer. I don't know. Like it's just one of those things where you just gotta make it your own. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there. We just need to be knocking on it. And let's face it, this what we're doing right here, we're working hard towards a goal. We're trying to make something bigger than ourselves, take the time where we could be watching TV, and we're trying to make something of it. And we want to impact the world in a positive way. I think this is good stuff. And you know, we don't know if this will ever become something, but we're availing ourselves to God to use us in some way, and hopefully it's something He can. So, you want to get into Romans?
Absolutely.
All right.
So
Go
Romans, today's reading is from Romans chapter 11, verses 7 through 10. So this is the situation. Most of the people of Israel have not found the favor of God they are looking for so earnestly. A few have, the ones God has chosen, but the hearts of the rest were hardened. And as the scriptures say, God has put them into a deep sleep. To this day He has shut their eyes so they do not see, and closed their ears so they do not hear. Likewise, David said, "Let their bountiful table become a snare, a trap that makes them think all is well. Let their blessings cause them to stumble, and let them get what they deserve. Let their eyes go blind so they cannot see, and let their backs be bent forever." So this is talking about the people of Israel who, for the most part, have rejected Christ. And it says that there's a few of them that have accepted, but for the most part, the large majority have rejected it. And it says that the hearts of the rest were hardened, and God put them in a deep sleep.
Yeah. So, we've talked about your event in February where you were trying to make that decision. And I'm convinced that if you had a crossroads at that point, you had a decision to make. You either were going to sort of sacrifice yourself and start living for God, sort of crucify yourself, this old dead you were going to give that up and live for Christ, or you were going to still live solely for the dead man.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I remember it. And I think that if at that moment you had really decided to go after what the dead man wants, I think that's where your heart would have been hardened. I think God would have allowed your heart to be hardened. And you would have been less responsive to the word of God. You would be less responsive to hearing the word, the voice of God. And I'm not saying you wouldn't have been a believer at that point. You may have still been a believer, but I don't think you would have. I think it would have been a worse situation for you.
It definitely would have been a worse situation for me. I will say that I was what I would consider in the position of this hardened heart for probably the majority of my Christian life. The majority of the time I would go to church. I like to listen to sermons on like podcasts and things because they would make me feel good. They make me feel a certain thing, or it gives me some sort of new insight into maybe life. And it was a benefit for me in a practical way. And I would listen to certain music sometimes, and I was going to, I guess, Christian resources for whatever it could give me. And for the most part, I was very content with that is what it is. That's the whole thing. And, if something was hard, it would not, I'm sure that I heard many sermons that should have been very convicting, but they weren't. And I'm sure that there was many people pleading with me to soften my heart and see how lost I was. But that part was kind of uninteresting. I was really just listening to see what I could get from it. And whatever I got, I would say, great, that was a nice feeling. And the rest was gone. And I wouldn't go to church with any kind of openness or, anything that would be a threat to what my status quo was. I had I had contempt for it. It was like, no. And one of the things when I watched that video or I had the crossroads, it felt very much like, oh, this is different. And now I have a decision to make. And if I don't make the decision, if I don't surrender now, I don't know when it'll come up again because I haven't been this confronted in a long time. And, the Bible says, I wish you were hot or cold, but since you're lukewarm, I would spit you out of my mouth. And the implication is that hot and cold are actually both better than lukewarm. And I always found that fascinating because hot, probably being the one that's good, you're red hot and passionate, or you're ice cold, you're frigid, and it's almost like you're like hate, right? You're in love or you hate. And the hate is actually sort of better because you're still engaged with that thing. Instead of it being a cooperative relationship, you're fighting it, but you're still engaged with it. But somebody who's lukewarm is sort of indifferent. And indifference, it's like you're actually farther away from the source if you're indifferent to it. It'd be better if you were in love with it or you hated it because you're still interacting with it, but indifference is like, well, you're kind of lost. It's hard to
Yeah.
come back from that. And I think that the majority of my Christian life has been spent really just kind of lukewarm. And I don't mean I don't think there's a day in a Christian's life where they don't think that there are aspects of themselves being lukewarm, because you can always imagine improving or being closer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, somebody like who's actually lukewarm doesn't care. They think, yeah, just go to church. I've got everything. Everything makes sense. I got my work life. I got my personal life. I got my Christian life, and they all work together for my ultimate benefit. They all make up the person that I am, and that's right. It's the person you are, and that's who you're serving. And so I read this about the Israelites, and it's like, yeah, God hardened their hearts. God has put them in a deep sleep. To this day, he has shut their eyes so they do not see, and closed so their ears do not hear. And you go, well, it's a scary situation to be. And it's amazing that it implies that the scariest place you could be is if you're comfortable. If you're just giving lip service and your Christianity is just your nice pictures on the wall, but hey, you've got your own life, you've got your own agenda, and that's what you live for. And the Christianity is just a little button that you put on your personality outfit, and you're fine with that. That's exactly how things should be. That's
Yeah.
it's not good. That's where I was for probably the majority of my Christian life. So, how does that hit you?
It's right on. I understand what you're saying. And we do, the lukewarm Christian verse, man, that hits you. And it's like, man, I don't want to be that. I want to be on fire. But you're right that a lot of us, we can get complacent and not be availing ourselves to God, and it can get dangerous feeling. And it's difficult to fully understand what that verse is really like. Where is the line exactly for lukewarm versus hot? Where is the line exactly for lukewarm versus cold? And it's not like I'm trying to work the lines. I'm saying I don't know what it looks like for me to be on fire.
Okay. You've never had a moment of lukewarmity that was so lukewarm that you could tangibly experience, like you could tangibly see it and go, okay, this is probably lukewarm.
No, I think I have experienced that. Yeah, I've definitely experienced that.
Do you have an example?
I think that there was a time where I was a young single man, and you're looking at, do I want to, it's Saturday night into Sunday morning, and it's like I was up late Saturday night, Sunday morning, it's time to go to church, and it's like, yeah, I just don't feel like it. Right? Like it's just, I could do nothing or go into church, and right now I feel like doing nothing. And I remember a time where I was like that, and part of it was that, like, you just think, all right, what am I going to benefit from going to church? Right? Like, I'm not that good of a singer, and you start like analyzing it in that way. There, it's like, what benefit is it for me? And that is exactly the opposite idea, right? Like, you should be there. I mean, you should be experiencing God every day, not just at church. And when you are at church, you're supposed to be, a part of the fix, not the problem. You're not going there to it's not like going to a movie where it's, all right, entertain me. You're going there to have fellowship. You're going to help people out, encourage, that's the right mindset, that you are a part of God's plan and doing things in a loving way. And I don't know. I think that's where
Well,
it's
I
at.
think I understand why you're trying to figure out where the line is, because you're lukewarm. Your lukewarm is still pretty hot in my mind. Because like I remember, I specifically remembered when I was in my young 20s and I was dating this girl, and we would spend every time we could together. It was constant. And
Yeah.
we would go out, on Saturday night, and then I would go back to her apartment and sleep with her and on Saturday night, and then we would both wake up together. And I remember specifically one day where we were getting ready for church, and it was like,
Yeah.
so we're just like doing the regular morning routine, and like she's getting dressed and I'm brushing my teeth, and we're getting ready because we're running late. We're going to church. And I remember thinking to myself, something about this situation is screwed up. I was like, we shouldn't have been sleeping with each other. And now we're going to go to church together, and like, we're fine with it. And I remember thinking, this is a messed up situation, because I feel like there should be some kind of a conviction attached to this whole scenario that I'm seeing unfold in this moment. And my conclusion, and what we talked about all the way to church, was how, our church sucks. Because if our church was good, we would feel bad about this. But we don't feel bad about it. And so our pastor he's got problems. I mean, he's just not preaching he's just not preaching a real message. So we shouldn't go to this church, because, which was ridiculous. The pastor was preaching fine. And it's not like we would have listened to it was bizarre. And in my memory, I go back and I go, wow, that was pretty lukewarm. Like you're participating and you think that you're still a Christian. So much so that I'm sitting here judging the pastor on the way to church because he's not saying anything that's convicting me of my actions. And it's like, I didn't see a problem with it, but it was like I could see the situation was so overtly kind of sinful that I could say, this is not right. And at the same time, not have a clue or make any real connection between how have I grieved the Holy Spirit so much that I think this whole scenario is sort of funny. And then it's actually kind of sad that our pastor isn't preaching good enough to convict us. Like, it's a very, very bizarre scenario. And you got to think a certain twisted way like me to probably relate to that. But when I think back, I think that was a very lukewarm time in my life. And I don't know I don't think there was a thing that could have reached me.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it would have made you go against what you actually really wanted. You wanted to be sinful, and it wasn't that the pastor wasn't doing a good job. You just had your priorities screwed up. Exactly. So, yeah. Here's a question for you. And this might be a tough one. So God hardens the heart of people who are not choosing him. He's allowing them to go into this deep sleep. I'm convinced that God is doing this for the benefit of them. There is a real tangible benefit to the individual who's getting their heart hardened.
Interesting.
By this. And I think that, well, how about this? I don't know that. I suspect that. What would be the purpose of hardening it? And alternatively, is it actually us that is denying God, and therefore our heart gets hardened? Or, I mean, it says, yeah, a few of the ones God has chosen, but the hearts of the rest were hardened. And so it's saying that their heart was hardened, but it's not specifically saying that God was hardening their hearts. But I suspect that there's a reason why our hearts are allowed to be hardened. And I suspect that there's that reason is maybe it's just, it would be too much for us to be denying God and have full understanding of what exactly we're doing.
Interesting. It does say that God put them into a deep sleep, and to this day has shut their eyes so they do not see, and closed their ears so they do not hear. So, I mean, God is playing some sort of a role, and whether or not that is for their benefit or not, it would make sense, because if he's a loving God, I remember in C.S. Lewis, there's a scene in The Magician's Nephew, the very first of the Narnia
Mm-hmm.
Chronicles. The two kids end up in this other world, like in Narnia, and but Narnia hasn't been created yet. It's like this big void, and all of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
they're there, but they're also there with their sort of horrid scientist uncle who created these rings that enabled the passage into the other world. And so the kids are there, and all of a sudden this lion comes out, and the lion is singing. And as he's singing and walking, everything around him is responding to the music from his voice. And grass is growing, and trees are sprouting up, and hills are rolling like a blanket being flipped. And the whole landscape is being generated, and the entire world is full of life. And there was even one of them had a broken chunk. It was a metal bar that had been snapped off from a lamppost in their world, and it had been dropped on the ground. And there was so much life in the world that that metal bar grew up into a brand new working lamppost, right where it was. And so it's really this
Really?
beautiful kind of a scene, and the kids are filled with wonder and amazement. But their older uncle was screaming and terrified and burying his face, and he was just completely frozen in fear. And the kids are like, "What's wrong with you? Like, this is amazing." And he was unconsolable. You couldn't even reason with him because he was in such a panic over this lion. And so the
Yeah.
lion told the kids, no, he refuses to see the evidence that's right in front of him. And so all he knows is that lions are dangerous in his world. And so all he hears is me roar. Everything I do to him looks like a threat of a predator. He hears roaring. He doesn't see the singing. He's not tying any of the new creation to what the lion's doing. And he's so far past reason, there's nothing I can do. He said, I can't bring
Yeah.
him into the conversation we're all having. He said, so there's one last generosity I can give him, and that is to take away his fear. And he went up to him and breathed on him and put him into a very deep sleep that the book says he was more deep and peaceful than he'd ever been in his life. So he now sleeps through the whole creation of the world, completely misses any relationship to what's happening. But it was a kindness, because, well, what's Aslan gonna do? And he still showed him the kindness. So that's what made me think of when you said, well, maybe God's being generous. I don't think that anybody is going to encounter God and then find out that God was ever working or did something that wasn't ultimately to their benefit. So if it says that God hardened their heart, it wasn't something that was just for the sake of cruelty. It was something
Mm-hmm.
for ultimate good, God's purposes.
Yeah. Yep.
So I have a friend of mine.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
sorry.
great. No, that's great. I really appreciate that. The Narnia story. I really appreciate
I
that.
have a friend of mine who says, the whole trick is if God loves me, then I just trust that whatever happens is the best for me. If I could see the whole big picture outside of myself and I could see things from God's perspective, everything that he does is the best he can possibly do for me. And so I trust him. Will I go to heaven or hell? I don't know. I put my life into his hands. And if I go to hell, then whatever that looks like, whatever it is that transpired, was still the very best he could do for me, given where I am and who I am. And so I can't think about it. I'm just going to put my trust in him and come what may. And I think it's a pretty amazing perspective.
And a good ending note.
And a good ending.